It has fucking problems. I'm in love with Tears of the Kingdom. This game is, in no uncertain terms, an achievement. But you already know that. I'm not explaining what this game does incredibly well. Unless it's necessary to make a different point. Fuck no! Today we are diving into my main problems with it. I thought that I was alone in feeling underwhelmed in many aspects, but will you look at that? So, it seems that 6 years of waiting have opened many people's eyes. What I mean by this is, well, Breath of the Wild wasn't perfect either. In fact, many of the problems that Tears of the Kingdom has are shared, and probably are a direct consequence of its prequel's design. So I have the sneaking suspicion that a lot of what Tears does poorly isn't gonna fly over people's heads anymore. What pains my hollow heart just a little bit is that in case this video ends up making some numbers, I'm gonna inevitably end up being thrown into the contrarian category. Because I dared say something I actually believe. When I probably like this game more than you. I'm just an honest fan that wants his favorite game series to be as good as it can and should be. So if you love this game, I do too, bro. I wish I was wrong about what I'm about to complain. And if you think Tears of the Kingdom is a piece of shit, fuck you and your bad taste, I guess. You're welcome to stay and help the performance of this video. But it's a shame you cannot help the performance of this video game. Yeah, that is my first complaint. Point 1. The technical performance. It is an absolute miracle that Tears of the Kingdom runs at all, and even a bigger one that it runs as well as it does on a fucking Switch. But it still doesn't run well. When it wants, it stays at 30 FPS. Not ideal, but we are playing with the most impressive physics engine on the gaming market on a portable console from 2015. When it doesn't want though, I've seen the game get close to 15 FPS on some boss fights. Yeah, the game is playable. And this is by far my smallest problem. But I find it really funny that there is a better way to play Tears than owning a Switch. It's called having a PC. It's no wonder that Nintendo is trying to crack down on piracy when Yuzu can run games at double the resolution and double the frame rate without paying a dime. Not like I care. As you can see, thanks to my modded Switch, I played 100 hours on my console. But the other 60 were on emulator and I wouldn't go back. But I didn't pirate my Switch to see my played hours. I modded my Switch to play Tears 2 weeks earlier. Also because pirating Nintendo games is morally correct. From now on, we are strictly talking about problems with the game design or writing, which I consider much more important. So, this is your last chance to leave before inevitably getting spoiled. I'm going to assume you have played the whole thing, or cheesed through the whole thing even, because that is the second complaint. Point 2. The absolute state of this game's balance. Besides the absolutely beautiful rework to the power system and how many whole orders of magnitude bigger the sandbox is, the balance of the game is still terrible. Don't get me wrong, I don't necessarily disagree with you being able to get really powerful and curb stomp every challenge the game gives you as long as your knowledge and mastery of the mechanics got you there. And there will always be a broken strategy, no matter which type of game. The fact that you can solve every problem in so many different ways is a testament to Tears of the Kingdom design as a sandbox, and that should absolutely be celebrated. But still, some mechanics are flat out broken and trivialize the whole experience when abused enough. You can choose not to use them, but if you have to limit yourself to not break your experience when the game allows you to in such an intuitive way, that is a problem with the game, not with the player. And this unbalance manifests in two main ways. Healing. Healing is absolutely the most broken aspect of Tears gameplay, which also was the most broken aspect in Breath of the Wild. Because no matter how many hits you took, how shitty your armor upgrades are, how little extra hearts you have, as long as you are not dead in one hit, every time you are really low you can see it. You can still see the anabolic window open and then you just spam the buttons to ingest super physiological amounts of calories to be a lean, mean killing machine. Link is the single most anabolic creature in existence. He never cuts. He only bulks. There is no limiter on how much items you can consume. And remember, you can open the menu at any point, no matter if you are knocked down on the floor and incapable of defending yourself. And even if the hit you just took killed you, nothing is stopping you from getting as many fairies as you want before a big fight. And then you are literally unkillable. This is also a problem in RPGs like Skyrim. But you are not catching me defending that game. Play Enderall is better in every single way. Might do a video on it someday. And let's be honest, it's not like the game automatically stops being fun if you are unkillable. Again, there are so many ways to interact with the sandbox that you are always learning something new, and that is indeed very engaging. Till you learn this build. Vehicles in tiers are generally limited by their components. Important components like plane wings don't exist forever. They fade and disappear. But there is no limit for turbines, and no limit to control sticks. So, this hover bike is essentially an infinite resource. The whole exploration part of the game, that is so well designed around you being able to build whatever your imagination can think of, is broken in half by this stupidly efficient 3-part vehicle. And yeah, you can just not use it. Just like you can stop using the Mimic Tear in Elden Ring. Oh boy, that is another whole can of worms. And I get it, it is really hard to balance single-player games. And some people would argue that it is a futile fight and I shouldn't even worry about it. And yeah, I can limit myself and not use the bonkers, overpowered shit in a game and have more fun. But we cannot imagine how many first and last playthroughs of this game will be ruined due to balance. Because people don't replay games, they just consume them and go to the next big thing. And it is really easy to feel the allure of the overpowered motorbike in the middle of a dungeon when the main challenge is traversal. Yeah, speaking of which, the dungeons. They have some problems. Point 3. The dungeons go 2 steps forwards, 1 step back, and 5 steps away from what they historically have been. Before bitching about it, let's state our terms, shall we? Okay then. Which do I think are the components of a great Zelda dungeon? First, a good and complex layout. A good dungeon must feel like, well, a dungeon. Traversal must be one of the main challenges you face. If you see a room in the distance, making your way there must be interesting from a gameplay perspective, if not outright difficult. So, how do you make it interesting? Maybe there are a couple of new enemies you have not seen yet on the way there. Maybe there is a puzzle that blocks your path, and maybe that puzzle would be trivialized by an item you will get further inside the dungeon, so facing it for the first time teaches you the mechanics that will be asked to be mastered during the rest of the temple. So speaking about that, secondly, an engaging main mechanic that is the essence of that temple. This mechanic usually will be interacted with by the acquisition of a new tool or an item from that dungeon. Good examples are the classic bow from Zelda games, the claw, the wind urn, and finally, cohesive level design that makes the whole place feel like a puzzle. What you do in a room shouldn't be an objective by itself, it should be a means to unlocking another part of the same whole. If you raise the water in one room, maybe it rises the water in the whole dungeon. So every choice you make affects the rest of this place and makes you think the consequences ahead of every turn. Okay, now what do we have as a starting point? Breath of the Wild Divine Beasts. The cool thing about this dungeons was that every one of the requisites I just explained was solved with the same tool. You were able to move parts of the dungeon. These parts changed the layout and offered traversal difficulties and solutions, were the main tool of solving the puzzles, and forged the identity of each beast, and by the very nature of being moving parts of the beast, also made each one feel like a cohesive whole. This absolutely genius decision was undermined by the lack of depth most of the puzzles had, the very samey look of each beast from the inside and the bosses at the end, and the lack of a real item to associate with them, which usually feels like a reward for having completed them. But instead of polishing this formula and making it better, Tears of the Kingdom just throws it away and tries something different. Let's see what we have gained and what we have lost. We finally have quote-unquote items in the form of the champions that accompany us during the challenge. Each one have a different power that Link by himself does not. And we earn them forever once we complete the dungeon. Obviously getting a bow, which we already have, or an item that creates electricity, which we already have, in a sandbox dungeon wouldn't cut it anymore. So having powers which only the champions have access to is a very smart solution, really cool. We finally have actual theming for each one, so the experience and atmosphere will be diverse, and not samey anymore. And also, they managed to allow for the use of the far more complex powers that we now have, with challenges that put our understanding of each mechanic to the test. Not only that, the build-up to each dungeon puts us through the break-in phase of the themed mechanics beautifully, which then will be honed in and explored more deeply later. But that's it really. Tears breaks the 3 rules I follow in one way or another. The Water Temple has really solid puzzles that require understanding of both the recently introduced mechanics as well as the potential of your powers. It also has an amazing build-up, where you climb and raise to the top of the sky with increasingly harder and harder challenges, but it breaks every rule. Traversal is trivial. Not only the whole dungeon is open, you are in a low-gravity environment, so getting anywhere is as simple as climbing the entrance arch and jumping. And of course, if you want to use your Zonai tools, then it becomes brain dead. And every puzzle is a self-contained one that does not affect anything else. The Wind Arc is spectacular, no doubt about it, and has a more fleshed out layout, but the puzzle difficulty is so basic that in my mind it has completely faded away from memory. Of course, again, there is mostly no interaction between parts of the dungeon, although this aspect is better than in the previous one. The Lightning Temple is by far the best dungeon in the entire game. It has a brilliant build-up not only before getting to it, but also once you go in. We get a taste of what the dungeon boss does before putting a foot inside. We do some classic Indiana Jones adventure shit, going into what looks like an old-ass tomb. And finally, we get to the big part and holy shit, is this it? Have you seen the amount of floors? And in what only can be considered a miracle at this point, yes, the puzzles interact. You finally get to a room, do something, and that something has the capacity to open more options that will need to be understood to open even more options. So far, this is the only actual classic dungeon we have gotten in the new Zelda games. It is cheesable, but not in any obvious or easy way, and it actually encourages us to use the new sandbox to solve problems, because some of the puzzles can only be solved by using said sandbox. It is fantastic, and the theme of redirecting light that has been established during a lot of shrines outside and during the build-up to it culminate here. So of course the last temple I played had to fuck it all up. The Fire Temple is a tragedy. It probably has the most complex layout of any of the dungeons. It has really decent puzzles, and traversal is made far more complex than in any of the others, due to this bonkers minecart system, which you have to study and learn to be able to get where you need to, unless you fire up the Hoover bike. It absolutely blows my fucking mind that what should be the best dungeon can be broken by 3 Zonai tools smashed together, and it's not like a less efficient design wouldn't break it too, it would only be slightly more expensive. I am livid that they did not even try to make an excuse to not allow you to use certain Zonai builds inside each dungeon. Trust me, I really do get it. It would quote-unquote betray the game design philosophy of this new era. If you give the player freedom, be consistent and all that. But you know what? I've not heard a single complaint about the shrines doing exactly that. Because shrines do not allow you to use Zonai parts unless they are given inside the shrine, which allowed a lot of them to have fantastic puzzles. Speaking of shrines, point 4. Shrines need more purpose. As a primer, let me be real with you. I fucking hate shrines. I hated shrines in Breath of the Wild, and I still hate them in Tears of the Kingdom. I think they are an insult to the quality level of dungeons we used to have. Every time I think about the concept of wasting dozens and dozens of really decent puzzles in short 10-minute challenges instead of them being part of something greater like a dungeon, my blood boils. Having said that, I'm fully aware that it's a me problem. So even though I don't like them, I've warmed up to the concept. And I've warmed up even more when the new shrines are categorically better due to the new sandbox in Tears. So now that you know that I don't mind them anymore, and I even like how well they are implemented for an open world game formula, why am I still angry? As always, missed potential. The shrines only work as a reward system. You see one, you get to it, you pass the challenge, and you get more health or stamina, that's it. You know how I've not talked about the Spirit Temple yet? Well, imagine if the Spirit Temple quest didn't end once you find Mineru's spirit. Imagine you need to activate each one of the 4 assembly factories with different objectives. Imagine that, on the surface, there are 4 intelligently placed shrines that, instead of only giving you the usual reward, give you riddles that you need to figure out in order to activate each assembly. Also imagine that you can do those shrines and activate the factories before finding the 5th Sage quest. And then, hours and hours later, you find the quest and you realize all the work you needed to do is already complete. Wouldn't that be fucking awesome? Imagine that. There are more related shrines like this around the world. Imagine that maybe certain secondary quests put you on a trail of clues that end up revealing multiple related shrines with more riddles as rewards, and that those riddles end up unlocking a main bigger shrine that puts the things you learned in the little shrines to the test. At that point, the self-contained nature of shrines disappears, because if you need to explore, solve puzzles and reason to be able to reach each one, and in each batch there is some logic that belongs to just it. Well, isn't that a dungeon? You could recreate the feeling of classic Zelda games without doing actual dungeons anymore. You could have sets of shrines that teach you lessons, culminating in an epic search for the main shrine, which puts your lessons to the test. But man, look, I'm not a game designer. I'm just a 27-year-old gym bro that pays an AI to read his scripts in his own voice. Because a 9-to-5 job doesn't give me happiness, or enough free time to record 1,000 takes in broken English. Where was I? Oh yes, missed potential makes me sad. I don't have an adequate segue to the next point, so I'm gonna just drop it, like a dragon tear from the sky. Point 5. Fractured storytelling is not appropriate for this story. The fractured storytelling of Breath of the Wild, aka Link's memories, were a perfectly adequate narrative device for the tone of its story. You played as an amnesiac boy, waking up after 100 years of healing in an unknown, undestroyed world. I don't claim to know how amnesia works, but it might make sense that you don't start remembering everything in order. So it's fitting that just running into random places where Link had experienced important moments of his past would maybe trigger some memories. Maybe you would suddenly remember, oh, Zelda is mad with me. And then the question becomes, wait, who is Zelda? I can only imagine how Link must have felt if he remembered everything slowly and out of order, so it was a genius narrative device in Breath of the Wild. It put you exactly in the same mental place as Link was, and I call that a victory. And as simple as its story was, it has stuck with me for a long time thanks to that and other reasons. Like Zelda, probably being the most fleshed out character Nintendo has written in years. And this same memory system does not work here. For one, this aren't Link's memories, this are Zelda's memories. So it flat out doesn't fit thematically as well. And, well, you could say that you are actually experiencing the Legend of Zelda. Because the events you are watching have been imprinted into the world that was molded by them. I think I will never be able to say something as pedantic as the words that just came out of my mouth. Yeah, I think the memory system is bullshit in tears. And I have to admit, even with the poor choice of narrative device, I was fucking glued to the screen. But it wasn't necessarily because the story was good, which it was. I just was madly concerned with what could be happening to Zelda. Because I love her. I love her character so much that just the fact that something terrible could have happened to her made me interested. But that is a win for Breath of the Wild, not Tears of the Kingdom. I'm not gonna complain without offering a solution though. This game is, again, a story about our favorite blonde princess. We got cucked out of having her as a companion, when there is functional companion AI in this game. And still we should spend more time with her, so what I'm offering is... Point 6. How is Playable Zelda still not a thing? I remember when I was a little kid and got a Game Boy Advance for Christmas. It came with the Minish Cap. I thought it was the best game ever. I replayed it not that long ago, and it might be the best 2D Zelda game. The thing is, there is a very vivid memory I have about it. It was the moment you finally get to the forest, and you acquire your cap, the Minish Cap, which is alive, and it becomes your companion for the rest of the game. I thought it was the coolest shit ever. Especially keeping in mind that Eslo, your talking cap, ends up being a very relevant character in the story. Some years later, I played Spirit Tracks on my Nintendo DS, and I lost my shit when I realized my companion for the rest of the game would be none other than the princess herself. To this day, I think that the move was genius. Is there a better way to make you care about the mentioned in the title of the game princess than making her your comrade? Zelda stole the show in that game, and not only as a talking voice at your side, but as a mechanic. They included her in the gameplay in such a well thought out way that Spirit Tracks wouldn't be the same game without her. So I've been dying for them to give this idea another try. And I think that they lost the best chance they had. Because this iteration of Zelda is the best girl, and you can go fuck yourself if you think otherwise. Of course, Tears of the Kingdom wouldn't be the same game with Zelda as a companion. The story wouldn't be the same. You would need to get a different backstory and conflict. But in a heartbeat, I would swap Tears for this game that only exists in my head. At any rate, here we are with a game without Zelda as a companion, and her memories as a narrative tool. But it didn't have to be like this. This was a brilliant chance to make something spectacular with that concept. What if Zelda herself was playable in the past? And no, I'm not offering having another whole open world where you can play as her. That would be beyond insane, and beyond any scope that Nintendo would be able to achieve. But what if instead of just getting her memories, we get short playable sections as herself? It would be a really solid way of connecting with what without doubts is the best character in the story. At the beginning of the game, you even get a moment where Zelda takes the Master Sword from the future and gets it back. It is never explained. Why don't we go deeper with this idea? Instead of dragon tears, let's get quote-unquote temporal rifts, created willingly or unwillingly by Zelda. Each time we get one of this, we start playing as her, having to complete a task that would serve a purpose for advancing her world-saving plan. Maybe some of these time rifts are found inside the dungeons, giving us even more opportunities to connect with her. Every time we do one of these tasks, Zelda learns more and more about how to use her time powers. And when we finally get the revelation that she became the light dragon to save the world, it would be an even bigger gut punch, because we helped her, because she trusts Link so much that knows whatever we are doing in the present with this time rifts is helping. It would break the player apart even more. And if you want to be extra hard on the player, maybe at some point she starts to master her powers enough that you can allow her to communicate with Link from the past. Still not enough to come back, but enough to see her grieving through time. We could get some touching moments of both of them being so close, yet 10,000 years apart. And maybe the perfect chance to allow Link to speak. Oh yeah, I'm going there. You better believe I'm opening Pandora's box, you cowards. I am talking about this. Will you ever fucking let my boy open his mouth? Point 7. Link's characterization is heavily hurt due to his inability to speak. During the arguably short history of the video game as a medium, there is a certain trope that finds itself appearing and reappearing time and time again. And it is an old one. It has been there since the beginning. And even when we reached a point where it stopped existing just due to limitations in budget or technology, it lived on. Mutes, shy ones, voiceless protagonists. Why is that? There are a few reasons, and not necessarily bad ones. The type of games that use this tool correctly usually prioritize immersion, be it mechanical immersion or story-related. Gordon doesn't speak in Half-Life because Half-Life is a game series that wants you to be an actor in its world. 3 important characters could be speaking about important events, but the game is willing to let you ignore them, because there might be some interesting stuff to see around, or because you might be role-playing unconsciously and getting closer to the character you enjoy more, or for literally whatever reason. This aids immersion a whole lot. Other games might have a very intense story that is perpetually making you second-guess your every choice and keep the main character silent, so you, as a player, can immerse yourself in the mindset and place the character would be. Maybe, as a player, you overthink certain stuff, and therefore could be pulled out of this interesting thought by a less than stellar comment from an underwhelming protagonist. This is all well and good, but there is a detail that we haven't considered. Can you make a previously talkative character a silent one if they become the main character? Oh no, you cannot do that. That is the reason Alex talks in Half-Life Alex. We already know her from past games. It would be even worse for immersion if we expect one of the most fleshed out characters in our series to just suddenly lose the ability to speak, right? I think we can all agree on that. Then why the fuck isn't it a big problem in The Legend of Zelda? Most iterations of Link are really simple characters. Them speaking wouldn't add that much to the story. I don't like that they don't, but it does not bother me, because in essence, Link is, time and time again, while a little goofy, just a good-natured boy with the heart of a hero. It is such a common, effective, and understood character stereotype that you don't need to hear or read him to understand what is happening. We already know. And sometimes him being mute also adds to the experience, like in Ocarina of Time. I remember clearly what I was thinking about when I was a kid playing Ocarina. Wow, this is such a cool adventure. So many cool things are happening. But as an adult, the same story beats hit completely different. If Link told Saria how much he's going to miss her when they say goodbye on that bridge, I would have never had this experience of realization. Realization that this game was not a cool adventure, but a beautiful metaphor of growing up. Well, now that we have enough context, I'll drop the act. Tears of the Kingdom doesn't benefit from a silent protagonist, and it arguably is worsened by it. There are multiple undeniable instances of pure characterization for Link in Breath of the Wild. And that is also very true in Tears. I'm sure you have heard about Zelda's diary, how she details her interactions with him. In case you have not, I'll try to be brief. You can find the diary that Zelda used to write 100 years ago in Breath of the Wild. You can read her every worry and feeling from the time of the calamity, and a big part of that is her relationship with Link. She speaks about how mad it makes her that he always chooses to remain stoic and silent, and thinks he, just like the rest, is judging her on her failures. Her failures as the princess and vessel of the goddess. She hates him for it, but if you keep reading, you find out it wasn't for long. Link saved her, of course he did, But it does not end there. She starts trying to connect with him, and, surprise, she manages to do it. And she loves what she finds. He is, after all, as I said, a goofy, good-natured boy with the heart of a hero. He is kind, brave, and loves eating. I'm not surprised, remember? But also, and this is a first, for Link's characterization, has a deeper side to him. There's a reason why he keeps silent. He feels it. The weight on his shoulders, the weight of responsibility of having to carry the Master Sword around and getting to save the world with it, and the weight of everyone's judgment, of everyone. The expectations of him being this fabled hero. This hurts him, and is what triggered this silent and stoic facade. This is fucking genius. Not only does it address the question, but it makes him an equal to Zelda, being the beautiful start to a bond that both will share forever. It is genuinely good characterization. For how simple it is, it achieves so much, and it's not only addressed here. There is so much in the cinematics. Take a look at those eyes. Zelda thinks everything is over and it's all her fault, and he cannot even think of what to say to ease her burden. It's heartbreaking, not only because of her, but because of him. And here, I can only see disappointment in himself, horror about what could happen to Zelda after his death. And there's more. Mifa's diary also confirms this change of personality in her diary. She talks about Link demeanor after meeting again so many years later. How tense he was, and no shit. You can see that in every scene he is in. But he changed. He changed because of Zelda. And Zelda changed because of him. They flat out tell us that. And after all that, after losing his memories, well, let's say I thought it was even more obvious. Look at how he expresses himself. Look at how he speaks to people. And see that posture. He is confident and relaxed in any conversation he partakes in. And when I say conversation, I mean it. You can choose your answers. For fuck's sake, don't make me speak about the game journal being written by Link in the original Japanese version, or I will be here forever. But yeah, he is even more expressive there. And for fuck's sake times 2, Zelda even quotes him directly in this cinematic. So yeah, we have a very defined character, first in the series if you don't count the advances done in Twilight Princess and Skyward Sword. There is so much characterization here that it would look like Nintendo is bending over backwards in order to keep him silent if they made a sequel and he remained a mute. Don't you think? I get it. Zelda's diary could be taken as an inside joke, a plain and simple explanation for why they will never let him talk, because Nintendo is too scared of the reaction to one of their most beloved characters saying something for the first time.
Well, excuse me, princess.
I have 2 things to say to that. Bull and shit. It's bullshit, because if you really tried to just hand-wave the reason for Link not talking, you fucked up big time. Because you managed to make it make sense and develop a beautiful story arc at the same time. So don't bring me that. Because I've already told you, I hate missed potential. I've seen what happens when you let Link speak already, and it's beautiful, let me tell you that.
Yo, I've heard you're a midnight Chad. Well, I have news for you, boy. I have news for you. This shit is really good. Like, this shit is actually really fucking good. Like, you don't know how good this is. You need to read this shit. Like, this is not just good for being a Zelda manga. Like, this is straight up good. Like, this is just good. Like, this is one of my favorite mangas ever. Like, this is actually fucking amazing.
Would you enjoy a video covering this by any chance? Let me know in the comments. I'm not just into video games. I am a man of culture, you see. Coming back to the subject at hand, it's been 5 or 6 years since the last time we saw Hyrule, both in our world and in theirs. It's all but confirmed that Link and Zelda are now in a relationship. There is no big baddie or destiny to fulfill up until the start of this game. Not everyone knows who Link is, and there is no pressure on him. The only pressure he feels now is the one he puts on himself to never leave Zelda's side, and probably her pussy lips stroking him every night. Yeah, I know about your escapades to the lover's pond, you sly dog. Link is not shy anymore. Just like he wasn't during Breath of the Wild, he needs to speak, but still has no mouth. And it not only impacts his characterization in cinematics, it impacts the story, because there is certain information about what happened to Zelda. You know what I mean. I know you know what I mean. And you can get this information really early into the game. And I would bet my ass most of players got the revelation around the middle point of the main story at most. And one would think that if you know what happened to Zelda, you would say it during the quest dedicated to looking for her around the continent. So people stop looking for her, maybe. Because you also know what it means if people is seeing Zelda while she is that. It means that people are looking for a fucking demon puppet. That could be dangerous, couldn't it? Will you say something, Link?
It's Zelda, Goro! Where's Zelda? That's really, really big!
It is so goddamn ridiculous the lengths Nintendo is willing to go to keep this boy silent. It damages the story, the storytelling, and the character. Just let him fucking talk and look for a way around having the issue of the characters still having to go to the temples knowing Zelda is basically dead. You can retcon it. You can make a mandatory conversation with Pura, where they decide to keep Zelda's fate hidden because looking for the princess would boost the troops' morale, because people adore her. Or maybe you can have our protagonist introspect in a cinematic, or maybe even just imply that he keeps the truth hidden because it's too painful, or whatever bullshit you come up with. Anything but this. But nah, I cannot keep up with this one. This is a passionate issue for me. Moving on, and there is a big missed opportunity here that you'll save for later, I guess. Speaking about saving Zelda. How the fuck did we even... Point 8. I'm sorry about getting stuck about Link not talking. Let's talk about the bullshit way we end up saving our dragon wife. You just save her. Okay, I'm being facetious. You can get some explanation from context. Rauru has the power of light that destroys evil, so that's a start. Sonia has the power of time that can return things to their original state. That also checks out. And they use Link's love for her to channel their powers. It kinda maybe somehow makes sense in Fantasyland terms. You undo a forbidden ritual by reverting it in time, cleansing its evil nature, and using someone pure and loving as a vessel for the power. I'm still not seeing it. Don't get me wrong, seeing Zelda come back made me really happy. I would have been fuming if they actually killed the Zelda that out of all of them most deserved a happy ending. And I'm far more permissive towards Deus Ex Machina shit when I care way too much about the characters or the story is in a certain video game series known as The Legend of Zelda. But do you know the reason? It's because story in a Zelda game has always been a subpar, although really fun and inspiring component of the series. In other words, I've been permissive towards shit like this in the past because I didn't took this saga story as seriously. That is a bad look, isn't it? But now they put their big boy pants at Nintendo, and since Breath of the Wild, I cannot ignore something like this. Speaking of which, that game also had a Deus Ex Machina moment, but it was much better because it was at least foreshadowed and wasn't such a humongous jump in logic. And that moment was Zelda finally controlling her powers. It's very simple, really. She berated herself because she felt like a failure. No matter how many goddess springs or how many rituals she did, nothing worked. Mipha tells her a tip. Maybe you need to think of someone you care a lot about to be able to channel a power like that. Yeah, power of love bullshit, but this whole series is about classical heroism, so I'll allow it. But it's too late. The calamity comes. Everybody fucking dies. And when even Link is about to kick the bucket, Zelda sees his demise and just cannot bear to stand aside. Pure love towards her knight and absolute determination to not let evil win is what lets her use her powers. It's simple. We have seen it 1,000 million times, but it works. It works because it is such a cultural staple that not even the most cynical storytelling critics, aka me, would question why this is the event that made her finally snap. In Tears, though, there is no implication. Also, we see Rauru's spirit disappear because he used the last of his powers to help Link get his bearings. So effectively, we have seen Rauru as a character die 3 times now. And there is also one more problem. We know draconification isn't a joke. Or it shouldn't be. They make it a serious issue, not me. And there is one detail that makes it worse. The game kinda spoils that you will save her. See this mission? This mission is still active even when you find the truth about the Light Dragon. So, if I've done everything that was asked of me on this mission path, and minutes before going to the final boss, you can see it still being active. What does that tell you? It really is a shame because... Point 9. The ending, while emotionally satisfying, betrays the impact that killing Zelda had and makes her sacrifice arc worthless. No beating around the bush this time. That's my point. I think I've elaborated enough already, so instead, let's offer some solutions. Again, I know I might be asking too much, but we still got this game when we didn't even know how you could make Breath of the Wild that much more massive with a sequel. So I don't think I'm being unreasonable. Let's make a new quest. Make 2 inaccessible temples, wherever. On the sky, on the underground, wherever. Not dungeons, although it would be fucking sick. I'm satisfied with temples, as in a building in the game. The doors should be closed, but both of them should imply, with statues or whatever, that each one belongs to King Raru's and Queen Sonia's spirits. Make an interesting, hard-to-find quest around both of the temples. You would interact with each one's spirits, just like you did at the start of the game on the Sky Islands. It would also be a very good chance for Sonia to meet Link. Look at her, she's dying to be able to. She looks like a mother wanting to meet her daughter's boyfriend. She's so cute. I love you, Sonia. You would need to pack really, and I mean really difficult combat encounters for each quest, and maybe a single extra difficult shrine for each one. Once you finish the magic quest bullshit, you could strengthen your connection to their spirits inside each of the 2 temples, and this would be the trigger for the good ending. I think this would justify that ending enough through gameplay. Because Zelda had to sacrifice to save Link and her kingdom, and Link would potentially die in the hardest part of the game to be able to turn her back. That sounds reasonable in my opinion, don't you think? Of course you do. My opinions are God tier. And I mean, I'm sure some people would still not enjoy the ending for how it betrays the tone of the game. But you can have your cake and eat it too. You can still add some tragedy to the ending. Maybe the ritual is unstable or something, and the only way for her to stay as a human is going back to the past again with Link. Both of them would hold hands, and while crying both of happiness for them reuniting and saving the world and sorrow of having to say goodbye, would meet one last time with their friends, and then vanish away and maybe, just maybe, share a kiss. Oh no. Oh no, Nintendo. Point 10. For fuck's sake, Nintendo! Let them hug at least for fuck's sake! I'm done with asking for this. Yeah, I know. I know the full fucking list. Zelda states that Link literally doesn't ever leave her side. She has his hairband for some reason. They spend so much time together that she had to hide a present for him in the damn throne room instead of home because, oh fuck right, that means they live together. He lets her live in his house and she threw his toys away. This two are so damn married now, God. She sometimes travels incognito to Lurelin Village and the Lovers Bond. I'm sure this fucker wasn't participating in that, am I right? This is just a small list of the ways Nintendo is screaming at us that, yeah, it finally fucking happened. And what a coincidence that the guy that wrote Skyward Sword, the only other instance of this two being together being almost confirmed, also wrote the new games, but just like with Link talking, they seem paranoid of outright confirming it. Fucking bridal carry, are you kidding me? It doesn't get any more classic than The Knight and the Princess. Who would get mad at this, huh? Weirdos on Twitter, so fatherless and friendless that mistake honest bro on bro kindness for gay zoophilic attraction because they have never had a friend in their lives. He is married now, goddammit! You are cowards, Nintendo! And I hate you, but still the game is amazing, so thanks, I guess. You might agree with everything I've said so far. You might agree with good part of it, maybe just some of it, or none. But I don't care how you differ with me unless you can outright correct some faulty info of my own, which... God, I hope I haven't made any honest mistakes because I've spent the best part of a month writing this piece of shit. The point is, you see this? This is unreasonable. Are you telling me that this many professional journalists think that there is literally nothing that you can improve in this game? But it's not only with The Legend of Zelda, it happens every year with every major release of any important game. Scores don't mean shit. Scores don't mean shit because all these people are either paid, clueless, or willingly using. The less than a 7 means it's a 0 scale of video game reviewing, which does not help anyone. Not you, not me, not the industry. So please pirate your games and buy the ones that are worth your money, just like I did with Tears of the Kingdom, because even though I've probably been complaining for 40 minutes, let me tell you something. I played it for like 150 hours and 90+% of that time, I was having the time of my life. That's a good note to end a negative video on. I'll see you guys on the next one, which is about a much, much smaller title that none of you probably know. Have a nice day, and thanks for watching.